It was a busy night at the renowned restaurant Soul Flavors, one of the most prestigious establishments in the city, located in the heart of Manhattan. The restaurant was known not only for its high-quality cuisine, but also for its elegant atmosphere, frequented by influential people in high society. What many didn't know was that the restaurant's true success was in the hands of Marcus Washington, a black entrepreneur who, through hard work and determination, had transformed that place into a symbol of sophistication and warmth. However, that night would be different for Marcus. He had decided to do something unusual, enter his own restaurant disguised as a homeless man to test how the people who knew him and worked for him would react to a humble and marginalized appearance. Hey everyone, before we continue with this amazing story, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment what city you're watching from. Take a moment to share your thoughts on how appearances can deceive and how discrimination is still a present problem in our society. Let's dive into Marcus's journey and see what happens when the owner becomes invisible in his own establishment. Dressed in old, worn-out clothes, with an unshaven beard and intentionally dirty skin, Marcus entered to the main door of the restaurant. His appearance contrasted sharply with the sophisticated environment around him. As he walked through the dining room, the looks of disgust and discomfort were immediate. Customers murmured among themselves, and some even looked away, as if his mere presence tarnished the elegance of the place. He was ignored by several employees, people who had worked for him for years and who couldn't recognize the real owner behind the disguise. One of the waiters, James, looked Marcus up and down with an expression of contempt. Instead of offering help or asking if he needed something, the waiter made a point of turning his face and pretending not to see him. Marcus tried to approach a table where a couple was dining peacefully, but as soon as he opened his mouth to ask for a glass of water, he was interrupted by a customer who said, "This isn't a place for people like you. Go find another corner to beg." The words echoed in the room, and the atmosphere became tenser. Marcus, still in his disguise, headed toward the counter where the manager, Richard, was standing with his back turned, supervising the service. Noticing Marcus's presence, Richard turned around with an expression of irritation stamped on his face. Without asking anything, he pointed to the exit and with a severe voice said, "You can't stay here. Leave now before I call security." Marcus, maintaining his composure, tried to explain that he just wanted a glass of water, but Richard interrupted him again. "You heard what I said. Get out now." The humiliation was public, and the way Marcus was being treated, without any dignity or respect, was a clear reflection of how appearance dictated a person's value in others' eyes. The same place he had built with so much work, where he insisted that respect for customers and employees was the key to success, now became the scene of cruel discrimination. Marcus knew the moment to reveal the truth was approaching, but he still wanted to see how far that contempt and lack of empathy would go. Soul Flavors was more than a gastronomic establishment. It represented a part of Marcus Washington's personal journey, from his most difficult times when he could barely support himself to becoming a successful entrepreneur. Marcus was the type of man who believed in people's potential regardless of their origin or social class. His life trajectory was marked by challenges and prejudices that he always faced with resilience and courage. Now, observing his own restaurant from a new perspective, he had a unique opportunity to understand the real impact of appearances and prejudice in daily life. Marcus always made a point of hiring employees who, like him, also came from difficult realities. He believed that by giving an opportunity to those who really needed it, he was contributing to a more just world. James, the waiter who had ignored him earlier, was one of those examples. Coming from a humble family, James was always grateful for the work opportunity, but over time his behavior had changed. With the restaurant's success and the constant high society clientele, he began to see himself as part of that elite, often forgetting his own origins. His contempt for Marcus disguised as a homeless man revealed how he had been molded by an environment of appearances. The manager, Richard, on the other hand, was known for his rigidity. With years of experience in the restaurant business, he believed that efficiency was the key to success, even if it meant being tough with employees and customers. For him, maintaining the restaurant's prestige meant avoiding any situation that could damage the establishment's image. That night, Richard was especially attentive because he knew an important food critic was present in the restaurant. Seeing Marcus in humble clothing, He immediately categorized him as a problem to be removed, without even stopping to reflect on the humanity behind that figure. The restaurant's main dining room was luxurious, with dark wood furniture and golden details. Soft lights created an intimate atmosphere, and the ambient music contributed to the elegant climate. Customers were immersed in their conversations and sophisticated meals, not caring about Marcus's presence. Among the patrons was the aforementioned food critic, a man known for his severe critiques who could either elevate or destroy a restaurant's reputation with his words. His presence added even more pressure to ensure everything at Soul Flavors was impeccable. As Marcus continued his incognito incursion to the restaurant, he noticed how indifference and contempt manifested in every interaction. Even employees who were always respectful when he was dressed in his normal attire now treated him with coldness. His experience that night made him reflect on how many times in his journey he had been treated the same way before achieving success. He knew this test wasn't just about restaurant management, but about the very essence of people. Among the employees, an exception emerged: Amanda, a young waitress who had been hired recently. She came from a modest family, and despite the pressure working in such a demanding environment, she always maintained a compassionate look in her interactions. Seeing Marcus in that situation, disguised as a homeless man, she didn't hesitate to approach. Without judgment, she offered him a glass of water and asked if he needed anything else. The simple gesture, full of humanity, contrasted with the coldness of others around him. Marcus, still maintaining his disguise, thanked her humbly, and in that moment, something inside him ignited. Amanda's attitude brought brief relief to that heavy night. Marcus felt that despite everything, there were still people who saw beyond appearances. Amanda represented the essence of what he believed, that everyone deserves respect regardless of their condition. She didn't know she was facing the restaurant's owner himself, but her empathy was genuine, and that was something Marcus would never forget. As the night progressed, Marcus began to prepare for the big moment. The humiliation he had suffered throughout the night would not be forgotten, but he was about to reveal his true identity in a way that would leave everyone in shock. The tension in the restaurant continued to grow. Marcus, still disguised, decided to test his employees' and customers' stance one more time. He got up in the chair near the counter and with slow steps walked to a table in the center of the dining room. At this table, a group of well-dressed people were chatting animatedly. They didn't notice him immediately, but when he approached and tried to interact, the reaction was quick and brutal. One of the women, bothered by his presence, made a gesture of contempt with her hand, as if shooing away an insect. "Please leave here. This is a place of respect," she said with disdain. Marcus looked around. No one moved to help him. The customers remained indifferent, and the employees who should have been ensuring service and respect were too busy with other, more important clients. Instead of offering any kind of help, many continued ignoring him as if his presence were invisible. The feeling of humiliation grew, but at the same time, Marcus maintained control. He knew his moment was near. In the kitchen, the situation wasn't much different. There, the chefs and assistants worked at an accelerated pace to ensure the dishes came out perfect. The head chef, Sergio, a man with an explosive temperament who had been at the restaurant for years, was known for his perfectionism but also for his impatience. When he learned there was a homeless man walking to the dining room, his first reaction was frustration. "How did they allow this?" he asked Richard furiously. "We have an image to maintain. Throw him out before he causes more problems." Richard, who had already ordered Marcus to leave once, was getting increasingly irritated with the situation. He approached Marcus again, this time with an even more aggressive tone. "I already told you to leave. I don't know how you managed to get in, but you won't be tolerated here." Marcus calmly looked into Richard's eyes but didn't respond. His silence, more than any words, irritated the manager. By this point, some customers also began to murmur about the homeless man's uncomfortable presence, and the pressure on Richard increased. Richard then did the unthinkable. He called 2 security guards who normally stayed at the entrance to physically remove Marcus from the premises. The guards, without hesitating, approached him, ready to expel him forcefully from the place. By this point, Marcus knew he had seen enough. He decided it was time to reveal his true identity and confront everyone present. With a firm gesture, Marcus asked the guards to stop. He raised his hand as if wanting to prevent any violent action. Then slowly, he removed the wig and dirty clothes, revealing his true appearance. The dining room fell into absolute silence. No one could have predicted what was happening. Those who had ignored him or treated him with disdain now looked on with shock and disbelief. The manager, Richard himself, who until that moment had despised him, was paralyzed. "Marcus!" exclaimed James, the waiter who had despised him at the beginning. His voice was loaded with surprise and guilt. The customers who had previously shooed him away now whispered among themselves, confused and embarrassed. They couldn't believe they had treated the restaurant's owner in such a disrespectful way. Everyone's expression in the dining room changed instantly, and discomfort took over the environment. Marcus took a deep breath and looked at each of his employees and customers. He didn't need to say much. The silence that followed the revelation spoke louder than any verbal reprimand. However, he decided he wouldn't let the situation pass without a lesson. He addressed manager Richard, who was still pale, not knowing what to say. "Richard," Marcus said, his voice firm but controlled, "this restaurant was built based on values of respect and dignity. We serve everyone regardless of their appearance or social condition. Today I wanted to see with my own eyes how these values are being applied here inside, and what I saw was deeply disappointing." Richard tried to justify himself, but Marcus raised his hand again, silencing him. "It's not just about you," he continued, looking around, "but about everyone here. I saw contempt. I saw prejudice. I saw humiliation, and this is something I will not tolerate in my restaurant." He then turned to the customers who had treated him badly. "Here we treat everyone with the same respect. If you cannot respect people for who they are and not for what they appear to be, then this is not the place for you." The embarrassed customers began to murmur, and some even got up to leave, realizing there was no way to argue with the restaurant's owner. Marcus finally turned to Amanda, the only employee who had shown compassion. "Amanda," he said with a slight smile, "you represent what I believe in. Keep it up, and you'll have a great future ahead." The night had transformed into something much bigger than a simple test. Marcus had revealed the ingrained prejudice in those around him, and everyone there, in one way or another, learned a valuable lesson. With the impact of Marcus's revelation still reverberating through the restaurant, subplots that were previously hidden began to emerge, revealing that Marcus's humiliation wasn't an isolated case, but part of a problematic culture that had taken root in the work environment. The first of these subplots involved manager Richard. Behind the scenes, Richard maintained a rigid hierarchy where older, connected employees received special treatment, while others were constantly belittled. This was something Amanda, the employee who helped Marcus, had already noticed but never had the courage to speak about. In recent months, Amanda had felt increasingly uncomfortable with Richard's practices. He treated wealthy customers in an exaggeratedly subservient way while ignoring those he judged not worthy of establishment. Amanda, with her empathetic and fair spirit, always tried to treat all customers the same way, but Richard's constant pressure discouraged her. However, Marcus's gesture praising her in front of everyone reignited her courage. She knew she needed to act. With this in mind, Amanda began approaching other employees who shared her concerns. She knew she couldn't confront Richard directly without support, but if she could gather testimony from other workers, perhaps it would be possible to expose the truth to Marcus in a way that would result in real change. Among these employees was John, the assistant chef who often felt neglected by head chef Sergio. John had creative ideas and tried to innovate on the menu, but was always silenced by Sergio, who refused to listen to suggestions, especially from someone he saw as inferior. John's subplot revealed that he, like Amanda, also felt the weight of discrimination in the work environment, not because of his appearance, but because of his position. He believed that as an assistant, he would never be taken seriously. Over time, John and Amanda began talking more frequently, joining forces to find a way to change the restaurant's dynamics. Marcus didn't know it, but his intervention was encouraging a silent revolution among his employees. Meanwhile, the relationship between Sergio and Richard revealed itself to be more complex than it seemed. Sergio, although rude and impatient, wasn't exactly Richard's ally. The The two men were in a kind of veiled dispute for control of the restaurant. Richard, with his authority over the dining room and customers, believed he had the right to dictate the rules, while Sergio, being responsible for the kitchen, saw himself as a true pillar of the establishment's success. This rivalry, until then silent, began to gain strength after the incident with Marcus. Richard, after the public confrontation with the restaurant's owner, was determined to regain control and show he still commanded the team. He began making sudden changes in how service was conducted, demanding even more obedience and imposing rules that in his mind would recover the order he believed he had lost. However, this authoritarian posture only increased dissatisfaction among employees. Sergio, on the other hand, saw an opportunity to position himself. He knew Richard was in a vulnerable position, and if he could maneuver intelligently, he could consolidate his influence. His first action was to approach Marcus, offering quick solutions to improve the environment and suggesting he should have more control over the restaurant's decisions, especially in the kitchen. Sergio was less concerned with the humiliation Marcus suffered and more interested in strengthening his own position. At the same time, Marcus continued to reflect on what he had witnessed. He knew the problem wasn't just in some customers' prejudice or Richard's lack of empathy. The work environment had been corroded by a hierarchy where discrimination went beyond appearances and affected how employees themselves treated each other. Amanda and John, without knowing it, were about to expose this to him. As Amanda and John advanced with their conversations, they finally decided to speak with Marcus directly. Both knew it wouldn't be easy, but after what he did that night, they felt it was the right moment. They organized a private meeting with Marcus, where they presented their concerns. Marcus, listening to them, began to understand that the change he sought needed to be much deeper than he initially thought. Amanda, with her renewed courage, spoke on behalf of the employees who felt oppressed, explaining how Richard's management was harming the work environment. John corroborated her words, adding that Sergio's behavior also contributed to the lack of innovation and motivation in the team. Marcus, visibly shaken by the revelations, realized that his initial intervention had been just the beginning of a much larger and necessary restructuring. The climate in the restaurant was tense, like a thread about to snap. Amanda and John's revelation had given Marcus a new perspective on his team and what needed to change. The entrepreneur reflected on his experiences and realized that the fight against discrimination and humiliation wasn't limited to him. What had happened the night he disguised himself as a homeless man was a symptom of a much broader culture that needed to be dismantled. It was then that Marcus decided to act boldly. He called a meeting with all employees, including Richard and Sergio, and announced that from that day forward, he would take the reins of the situation. He wanted everyone in the restaurant, from the dining room to the kitchen, to participate in a restructuring that sought a more inclusive and respectful environment. The idea was simple. Each employee should present their concerns and suggestions on how to improve work dynamics and treatment among themselves. That day, Marcus wasn't just a restaurant owner, but a leader willing to listen. He began the meeting by revealing his identity and his experience as a homeless man. With this, he made a powerful emotional connection, explaining that no one should go through what he went through, regardless of their appearance or social condition. It's time to stop with hypocrisy and discrimination within our own walls, declared Marcus with a determination that echoed among those present. Everyone's eyes turned to Richard and Sergio. The environment was palpable, charged with expectation. What would happen now? Richard, who always showed himself to be arrogant, hesitated before speaking. It was the first time he found himself in a situation where his authority was so openly challenged. He tried to defend himself, stating that his management style was necessary to maintain the restaurant's quality. However, Marcus wasn't willing to accept that justification. What quality are we talking about? The one that humiliates others? The one that creates an environment where people are afraid to express themselves? Questioned Marcus with a firmness that made silence echo through the room. That was the first time many employees felt valued, as if their voices could finally be heard. The turning point had arrived, and no one could ignore it. Sergio, perceiving the fragility of Richard's position, tried to navigate the situation. He, who always felt pressure to maintain a facade of control, began to deflect responsibility and blame others for the negative atmosphere that had formed in the team. "Marcus, I just follow the guidelines you establish. If employees aren't up to par, that's not my fault," said Sergio, looking for a scapegoat. However, Marcus was already prepared for the strategy. He had talked with Amanda and John about the importance of honest and authentic feedback, and now he counted on their support. Amanda raised her hand without hesitating and said, "Actually, Sergio, your lack of support prevents us from growing. Whenever we try to bring new ideas, you dismiss them without even considering them." That statement was like lightning, illuminating the room with the truth everyone feared to express. Eyes began moving among the employees, and more voices started rising, one after another, until the room filled with a chorus of support. They weren't just defending Marcus. They were uniting to claim a space where they could feel respected and valued. The restaurant that was once a place of fear and discrimination was beginning to transform into a space of dialogue and mutual respect. Richard and Sergio's reaction was a mixture of indignation and confusion. Richard, unable to accept the new dynamic, stood up to leave a meeting, but Marcus didn't let him go. "If you leave now, you'll be admitting you're not willing to change, and that's the only condition I accept for you to continue in your position here," stated Marcus firmly. That was a strong and direct declaration, a clear sign that things were about to change regardless of who opposed it. With Marcus's words, a new climate was established. Richard realized his influence was diminishing, and that employees' voices were becoming stronger. The turning point not only dismantled the oppressive hierarchy he had imposed, but also revealed the strength of unity among workers. The structure he had built was fragile, and was now about to be rebuilt in favor of a new collaborative management model. Sergio, for his part, felt threatened, but his reaction was different. He began adopting a defensive posture, trying to argue that his skills as a chef were fundamental to the restaurant's success. However, Marcus, perceiving the manipulation, responded, "What we need isn't a boss who governs, but a leader who inspires. Everyone should have a role and be heard." That was the last straw for Sergio, who realized he was losing control and that his tactics no longer worked. With this, Marcus made a bold proposal. He suggested a training day for the entire team, where each person would have a chance to discuss their roles and how they could collaborate better. He wanted everyone to participate in developing a new work environment. "We're all here to create something incredible together, and that starts with mutual respect," declared Marcus with a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That moment would mark not only the restaurant's future, but also the life of each employee who dared to stand up and demand respect. The transformation was underway, and Marcus finally felt at home. The meeting Marcus organized became a watershed moment at the restaurant. The echoes of united voices resonated through the walls, transforming the environment of fear into a space of empowerment and respect. In the following weeks, a new culture began to take shape among the employees. Interactions became more open and honest, while Marcus worked tirelessly to implement the changes he had promised. Each team member now felt part of a common purpose, which brought new vitality to the restaurant. The first signs of this transformation were visible right in the following week. Marcus organized a team training where everyone had the chance to share their ideas and suggestions. The event was a resounding success, and the energy that was once suffocating was now replaced with enthusiasm. Employees who once felt unmotivated began expressing their opinions and actively contributing to the restaurant's daily operation. This change, though small, began to have a significant impact on team morale. John and Amanda, who were deeply involved in the new organizational structure, also felt the weight of the change. Amanda, one of the cooks, began leading a team in charge of creating new dishes, and her creativity began to shine. The menu gained freshness and innovation, attracting new customers who were enchanted by the different proposals now being served. Positive reviews began appearing on social media, and the restaurant started standing out again in the city's gastronomic scene. However, not everyone was satisfied with the changes. Richard and Sergio, whose positions of power were severely threatened, tried to undermine the new collaborative spirit. Richard, who had always been a voice of criticism, began questioning Marcus's decisions in private. He didn't hesitate to insinuate that the changes were just a form of political correctness, and frequently made negative comments about the new management, trying to destabilize the confidence Marcus had managed to build among employees. On a particularly tense day, Richard made a sarcastic comment during training about how some chefs don't understand that the kitchen is a war zone. The environment became charged, and tension was palpable. But instead of being shaken, Marcus just smiled and responded, "Here we're not at war, but on a team. And the only battle we're facing is creating a better environment for everyone." That solid response echoed among those present and further reinforced employees' determination to support Marcus. Sergio, on the other hand, decided to adopt a more dissimulated approach. He began distancing himself from employees, avoiding meetings, and focusing only on his own comfort zone in the kitchen. However, Marcus was attentive to these behavioral changes. He decided it was time to act once more. After a team meeting, Marcus called Sergio for a private conversation, where he directly addressed his concerns. "Sergio, I'm noticing you're not engaged with the rest of the team like before. This not only hurts the group's morale, but also your own position here," said Marcus with a firmness that left no room for doubt. Sergio tried to defend himself, claiming he was too busy with the restaurant's operational part, but Marcus wasn't fooled. He knew Sergio's resistance was a clear sign that the status quo was being challenged. Faced with Marcus's insistence, Sergio found himself cornered. He realized his tactics weren't working and that the team's unity was too strong to be dismantled by one person. "If you want me to participate, I'll need more autonomy in the kitchen," said Sergio, trying to regain some of the control he had lost. Marcus, with a calm smile, responded, "Autonomy is something you earn, not take. If you're willing to collaborate and support your teammates, you can certainly have more space for your ideas." That response left Sergio thoughtful. The truth was that Marcus's new management was based on trust and collaboration, and if he wanted to continue at the restaurant, he would need to adapt to this new reality. The impact of the changes on the team went beyond the restaurant's walls. News about Marcus's new approach and the transformation occurring began circulating among customers. Online reviews were increasingly favorable, with many praising the welcoming environment and the feeling of inclusion that permeated the place. Social media was full of comments from customers who felt welcome and appreciated, regardless of their appearance or origin. Days passed, and the restaurant began standing out in the city as an example of innovation and respect. Tables filled up, and customers were received with genuine smiles and exceptional service. The transformation Marcus had initiated was creating a real and positive impact for both the team and the customers. But the real test would come at a special event Marcus had organized, a tasting night to celebrate the restaurant's new phase, where employees would become protagonists of the event, presenting their dishes and sharing their stories with guests. It was a way to recognize the team's hard work and show the world what they had built together. The tasting night finally arrived, and the atmosphere in the restaurant was electrically charged with expectation. Marcus had prepared meticulously for this event, knowing it was an opportunity to show not just the quality of the food, but the transformation of culture within the restaurant. The team was enthusiastic, each member dressing elegantly, reflecting the pride they now felt in being part of the team. In the kitchen, the team was in constant motion, chefs and cooks collaborating with one goal in mind, creating a memorable experience for customers. Amanda, now the leader of the creative team, was especially excited because one of the dishes she had developed, a modern take on a traditional dish, would be the night's highlight. The flavor and presentation of the dish symbolized what the restaurant was becoming, a fusion of tradition and innovation. Marcus, watching the team work in harmony, felt warmth in his chest. He knew each smile, each exchange of ideas, and each laugh echoing through the kitchen represented overcoming the difficulties faced in previous months. The transformation of organizational culture wasn't an easy task, but now it seemed everyone was committed to the restaurant's new purpose. Past experiences of humiliation and discrimination had been replaced by a spirit of camaraderie and mutual support. As the night approached, Marcus made a point of gathering the entire team. He wanted each of them to know how important their contribution was. "Today we're not just serving dishes, but telling stories," said Marcus, looking into each person's eyes. "Each of you is part of this narrative. What we've created here is a reflection of who we are, and I couldn't be prouder of what you've accomplished so far." Applauded by their colleagues, the atmosphere was celebratory. When the first guests began arriving, the energy in the restaurant was palpable. The decoration was impeccable, with elegantly arranged tables and candles creating a welcoming environment. Employees were ready and interactions with customers were warm and authentic, demonstrating that the change in the restaurant's culture was visible and contagious. Conversations flowed and laughter echoed, creating an atmosphere that was both sophisticated and welcoming. Marcus decided the highlight dish moment would be special. He asked Amanda to present her dish to the guests, a decision that left her nervous but at the same time emotional. The spotlight was on her, and with a gleam in her eyes, she addressed the guests. This dish you're about to experience is a tribute to our roots, to the culture we all bring to this space. I hope you feel the love and dedication we put into each ingredient. As the food was served, guest reactions were instantly positive. Looks of satisfaction and murmurs of approval filled the air, and each forkful was a testament to the hard work and transformation that had occurred in the kitchen. The dishes weren't just meals but narrative of overcoming unity and respect. However, the event wasn't just about food. It was a celebration of the restaurant's new philosophy. Marcus made a point of approaching customers and asking how they were enjoying the new additions to the menu, listening attentively to their opinions and suggestions. He wanted to ensure customer feedback was taken into consideration, as he believed interaction with them was fundamental for the restaurant's continued growth. The night was a complete success, and the criticism was unanimous in recognizing the restaurant's new proposal. Social media was flooded with praise, and Marcus knew this was just the beginning of a new era. 6 months later, Marcus received a letter. It was from Amanda, who had been promoted to head chef. John had become assistant manager and was implementing innovative training programs. Even Richard and Sergio, after much reflection, had begun embracing the new culture of respect and collaboration. The restaurant continued thriving, not just as a place to eat, but as a symbol of transformation, dignity, and hope for all. The night Marcus disguised himself as a homeless man had sparked a revolution that changed countless lives. Wow! What an incredible journey we just experienced together, right? Marcus's story teaches us that true strength isn't in our appearance or position, but in our ability to see and treat others with dignity and respect. It shows us that discrimination and prejudice can be dismantled when we have the courage to stand up for what's right, and that every single person deserves to be valued for who they are, not what they appear to be. If you watched all the way to the end, comment, "I watched Tio the Yendi." I want to see how many warriors like Marcus we have here on the channel. And tell me, which part of the story impacted you the most? Was it when Marcus revealed his identity? When Amanda showed compassion? Or when an entire team came together to demand respect and change the restaurant's culture? This story proves that one person's courage can inspire an entire community to transform. Marcus didn't just change his restaurant. He changed lives, opened eyes, and created a space where everyone, regardless of their background, could feel valued and respected. Don't miss the next video. Click on the video that appears on your screen right now. There's an even more powerful story waiting for you. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our stories about courage, transformation, and overcoming adversity. Remember, the way we treat others says more about us than it says about them. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Let's create spaces of respect, inclusion, and dignity for everyone. Subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear this message today. And let's together build a more empathetic and just world. Until next time, warriors, keep fighting for what's right. Keep treating everyone with respect. And never forget that true success is measured not by what we have, but by how we lift others up. Stay blessed. Stay humble. And remember, you never know when you might be entertaining an angel unaware. Peace out.